How is fibromyalgia diagnosed? 25 years ago, I went to 4 different doctors over 4 months before anyone even mentioned the word fibromyalgia. Today, the process is better, but it still takes time. In this video, I'll walk you through the complete diagnosis journey, what tests doctors look for, the specialists involved, and what you need to know at every stage. For most people, the journey starts with your GP, your general practitioner or primary care doctor. They'll ask about your pain, sleep, memory, mood, and how your symptoms affect your daily life. They may also ask if you've had any illnesses or injuries over the past year, because things like a virus, surgery, or a major life shock can sometimes trigger fibromyalgia symptoms. They'll usually run blood tests to rule out other causes of pain and fatigue, such as thyroid issues, vitamin deficiencies, rheumatoid arthritis, or look at other inflammatory markers. If everything comes back normal and your symptoms fit, fibromyalgia becomes a possibility. In my case, I saw 4 different GPs over 4 to 5 months. Each one ran their own blood tests and each going a level above the ones before. It was frustrating and worrying, but looking back, that process of ruling things out was necessary. When test after test comes back normal but you still feel so unwell, it's natural to worry. I remember thinking there must be something seriously wrong because my symptoms came on so quickly and were so severe. But those normal results were actually the clue that my doctors needed. Fibromyalgia is called a diagnosis of exclusion, and that means doctors need to rule out other conditions first. So things that can look similar to fibromyalgia are chronic fatigue syndrome, ME, lupus, and any other autoimmune condition, multiple sclerosis, or you might even have been misdiagnosed with depression or anxiety when there's actually a physical component that leads to it more likely being fibromyalgia. It was the 4th GP I saw, a female doctor, who finally looked at all my results together and said, I think you might have fibromyalgia or chronic fatigue syndrome. That was the first time I'd heard those terms. I asked her what that meant and she explained, but then she said, let's wait, I'll refer you to a specialist and he'll do the diagnosis, and if that is the case, we'll take it from there. In some cases, your GP may make the diagnosis themselves. In others, especially if you have other long-term conditions or if the picture isn't clear, they'll refer you to a consultant for confirmation. So, who actually makes the diagnosis? In the UK, it's usually a rheumatologist. That's a doctor who specialises in conditions affecting muscles, joints and connective tissues. Sometimes you might see a pain specialist instead, depending on your local NHS pathway. After my GP referral, I waited another few months before I got the appointment, and then I had to wait a few more months for that appointment, and that's fairly typical. NHS waiting times for rheumatology can be anywhere from 3 to 6 months, and sometimes longer depending on where you live. If you're considering going private, the wait is usually much shorter, but that's obviously a personal decision based on your circumstances. So what happens at the specialist appointment? They'll go through your full symptom history, do a physical examination. They'll review all your test results and use specific diagnostic criteria to decide if fibromyalgia fits to your symptoms. The appointment can take anywhere from 20 minutes to an hour. When I finally got to see the consultant, I went on my own, which was a big mistake in hindsight. Always take someone with you if you can. This was 25 years ago, and back then they used what were called tender points, 18 specific spots on the body that you had to have pain in at least 11 of them to qualify for fibromyalgia, to be diagnosed with fibromyalgia. The consultant started pressing these points, so places like the back of my neck, the top of my shoulders here, or the inner elbows and the top of the hips. And I think he got to about 11 points and said, there's no need to go any further. You've definitely got fibromyalgia. Then he seemed to get quite irate and upset. And he said to me, women like you think you can do everything. You can work, you can socialise, you can do everything at home as well, run the house, look after your families, but you can't do everything. And then you end up in my room with conditions like this. I was shocked and extremely upset. I didn't ask any questions. I basically just left and ran out to the car and cried my eyes out. That was my diagnosis experience 25 years ago. Now, I'm sharing this not to scare you, but to show you how much things have changed. The diagnostic criteria are much more comprehensive. They take into account every part of the condition, not just pain points. And that kind of dismissive, judgmental response is far less common today. So what's changed? Today, doctors use updated criteria that focus on your overall symptoms rather than specific pain points. And there are two main parts to this. First, they look at a widespread pain index. How many areas of your body have been painful in the last week from a list of 19 possible areas? So places like your neck, your shoulders, your upper arm, they all count as separate parts of the body. Your abdomen, upper back, lower back, hips, upper legs, lower legs, etc. Then they use a symptom severity score, which covers the other symptoms like fatigue, unrefreshing sleep, brain fog, and headaches, depression, or abdominal pain. The doctor looks at both the scores together and how long the symptoms have been present to decide if fibromyalgia fits. Usually that means widespread pain in several body areas for at least 3 months, plus fatigue or cognitive symptoms. So let me show you how this works in practice. Someone might report pain in their neck, both shoulders, and their upper back and lower back, both hips and both legs. That's already 9 areas on the widespread pain index. Then they score high on the symptom severity score because they have fatigue, they're waking unrefreshed, and they're experiencing brain fog. If this has been going on for more than 3 months and other conditions are ruled out, that's when the fibromyalgia diagnosis becomes clear. Another important change is that fibromyalgia can now be diagnosed alongside other conditions, and this didn't seem to happen so much 25 years ago. So if someone has arthritis and the doctor believes there's an added layer of widespread pain and fatigue, let's say, they may diagnose fibromyalgia as well, and I know several people who've had that diagnosis on top of other conditions. Now, other possible paths for diagnosis are that researchers are currently exploring brain imaging and specialised blood tests, but these aren't available yet. They're still in the research phase. But if any news changes on those, I will come back to you with a video on them as soon as possible. So at the moment, the symptom-based criteria from the widespread pain index and the symptom severity score are the gold standard for diagnosing fibromyalgia. If you're waiting for a diagnosis right now, a few simple things can really help you. So keep notes of when your symptoms started and how long they last, and anything that seems to make them better or worse. I learned this the hard way. At one appointment, I forgot to mention my sleep issues because my brain fog was so bad that day. From then on, I always wrote a list and took it with me to GP appointments, and I still do that today. So if you think fibromyalgia may be an issue and you want to go and see your doctor about it, here's what helps. Keep a symptom diary with a pain scale in it from 1 to 10, 1 being the least and 10 being the highest pain. And note where the pain is happening and how long it's lasting, so the location and the duration. Also list all the medications that you've tried and whether they helped or not. Write down your family history of conditions and especially autoimmune conditions if there are any. And you can take photos of any visible symptoms like rashes or swellings and take those with you. And then finally, if you write down any questions that you might have for the doctor, because it's easy to forget in the moment. It can be frustrating when every test comes back clear, but that's actually a key clue. Once other conditions are ruled out, fibromyalgia often becomes the most likely answer. One thing I'd wish I'd known 25 years ago is that you have rights as a patient. If your GP isn't taking your symptoms seriously, you can request a second opinion or ask to see a different doctor in the practice. You can request a specialist referral if you feel it's needed also. And if a consultant or any doctor is dismissive or makes you feel judged, that's not acceptable. You deserve to be treated with respect and compassion. Don't be afraid to advocate for yourself or bring someone with you who can speak up on your behalf. The diagnosis journey can take time. On average in the UK, it's anywhere from 2 to 5 years at the moment from first symptoms to confirmed diagnosis. Now, that will include multiple GP visits, your blood tests, which obviously take a few weeks to come back, the referral wait list for 3 to 6 months, and then if you have any other specialist appointments, there may be a waiting list or another 3 to 6 months before you get to those appointments. Knowing this timeline helps manage expectations. It's not that the doctors aren't listening, it's that the process of ruling things out takes time. After my diagnosis, I did get some help. I was referred to my local hospital's occupational therapy department. They ran a 6-week course on one afternoon a week. They were quite honest and upfront that they said, we don't know how to treat fibromyalgia, but we have learned some things and we'd like to share what we know helps so far. So they talked about things like pacing, managing sleep, managing your emotions and things like that. And some parts of it were really helpful, especially the pacing. That was a really unfamiliar concept to me, not finishing what you start straight away. And some concepts like improving sleep were hard to manage so early on in my fibro journey. I think when you're so unwell, you can only focus on one thing at a time. But it's good to have all that information, and they gave me a big folder with everything written down in it so I could keep looking at it afterwards as well. But the thing that was most helpful about that program was sitting in a room with other people with the same condition and feeling like I wasn't alone in this experience. And also, throughout my 25 years talking to different doctors and specialists, I have found that occupational therapists have the most useful and practical advice on managing these sorts of conditions. So if you are offered any kind of pain management program or fibromyalgia support group or occupational therapy after your diagnosis, I'd encourage you to go on that. Even if the medical side isn't perfect yet, the community support and that practical specialist support is invaluable. Getting a fibromyalgia diagnosis can feel overwhelming, especially when the journey takes months or even years. But I want you to know that awareness has improved so much since my diagnosis 25 years ago. Doctors understand fibromyalgia better. There's more awareness around the condition generally. The diagnosis criteria are more comprehensive. They take into account everything. And there's a whole community of people who understand what you are going through. If you're waiting for a diagnosis right now, keep advocating for yourself. Keep those symptom notes going. Take someone with you when you go to your appointments if you can. And remember that normal test results aren't bad news. They're part of the picture. If you're going through the diagnosis process and you have questions, feel free to ask them in the comments. And for those of you who've been living with fibromyalgia for a while now, I'd love to hear from you too. What would you say to someone who's newly diagnosed? What message of hope has helped you through the early days? Share your thoughts below. A supportive community is vital as you go forward on your fibromyalgia journey. Community really helps to deal with the stress that comes with the condition, which can be overwhelming. But here's the good news. There are ways we can manage the stress so it doesn't impact our symptoms so severely. And I'm covering exactly how to do that in the next video coming this week. So until then, take care of yourself and be well.